And there is breaking news coming in. India's Union Cabinet has approved an ordinance which sought death penalty for child rapists. This means that death penalty will be the maximum punishment for offenders. Earlier, the maximum sentence for life imprisonment and or a fine. That was the maximum sentence for rape. Life imprisonment or a fine. And as we all know that the union was supposed to consider an ordinance, making changes to the ordinance to amend existing laws to award death sentence to those found guilty of raping a child below 12 years of age. And to give us more perspective and information on the story, I am joined in by our political editor, Mr. Kartikeya Sharma. Kartikeya, tell us more about this ordinance which has finally been promulgated by the government now.
See, this ordinance has come under the POSCO law. See, there were certain laws which were made in 1990s and 2000 pertaining to crime against children, which also included sexual crime. Now, there has been a great public outrage. The issue of death penalty was also discussed during Nirbhaya case. But late Justice Leela Seth argued against it, and she said death penalty cannot be the solution for everything. What is required is maximum punishment at the first instance of sexual harassment. But what has happened is that a lot of underage sexual crimes were reported and the public opinion was made against the government. So I think what the government has done is that they have decided to insert a clause depending on the case. If there is a case of rape against a minor and an assault like that in which the minor dies, then the maximum punishment can be death penalty. Now, when we have to understand the clause of maximum punishment, like for example, there are punishments in which there are issues in which you can be punished for maximum 2 years. There are certain things you can be punished maximum for 10 years. There are certain punishments which include death penalty. Murder is one of them. Genocide, in which people get killed. Now, in this, and death penalty is given in the rarest of rare. But what has happened is the government, through an ordinance, has inserted it, the maximum punishment of death penalty against crime against children. Now, a lot of people can have multiple views on it. Like, for example, you would remember that when there was a lot of crime in Harlem in America, right. There was a policy of broken windows, which means that a person who breaks the law for the first time would get such a severe punishment that it would put fear of God into the hearts of people, which meant that the violent crimes came down. So there are two views, but right now you see, government also kicks in with legislation to contain public opinion. Point is, India has so many laws, but laws are not getting effectively implemented. India has anti-dowry law. Has it prevented women? Has it prevented women from not getting burnt? No, it has not. You have ST/SC law. ST/SC continues to get assaulted and ridiculed in rural areas. Has the law stopped it? No. It is about implementation of law. And I'm surprised that this government had spoken about less law and more governance, and under public pressure, it is only talking about law, because law is only operational if it is effectively implemented.
Right.
So I think people will have to see it in this perspective.
Absolutely agree with you, Kartikeya, that the implementation is what is going to actually decide how integral this amendment to POCSO is going to be. And what about speedy trials, which were also being considered, as part of this change in the ordinance?
You see, to have special courts under for certain trials are a different ballgame altogether. You have special courts for defense or war or other issues. But my understanding is that more than speedy trial or anything, this is about this depravity. It is about the fact that in India the rights of individuals are not respected. Everything turns into a community warfare. Imagine what has happened with that Kathua girl. She didn't even know her left hand from the right, but she was described as a Bakarwal Muslim. So I think there has to be some sort of education of society itself. Were those rapists uneducated people? They were all educated people. They were all economically well off. So prejudice, bias, violence, and patriarchy is not incumbent on, I would say, education. It's a bias.
Right. So, Kartiki, clearly the gruesome rapes in Unnao and Kathua have, the government had, following these, the government had indicated that it wanted harsher punishment for the guilty. Precisely, what are exactly the amendments, if you could run our viewers through, this POSCO Act, what are the amendments that have been made through POXO?
See, I'll give you a very simple outlet. See, amendments have been made in multiple parts in terms of making law very, very stringent. I'll give you an example. I will not get into the nitty-gritty. Like, for example, when in a dowry case, a woman files a complaint, it is incumbent on the person against whom the complaint is to satisfy the police. Woman does not have to do that. So, similarly, in this case, it will be incumbent upon the person to clarify his position and not the girl. So, this makes it very tough for people to get away. You will not be able to say, you don't have sufficient evidence against me. No, the proof of innocence will have to be provided by you. It makes everything tough for the perpetrator. So I think it is in that context I will see that. And yes, the maximum punishment is death. It's a deterrent that any judge, if he thinks that the crime has, if he looks at the crime, he can give you a death punishment. Death penalty in any crime in itself stands as a deterrent. It's like murder case. You know that you can be awarded, you can be given death penalty by the state on a murder. But when you have an accident, you will not get a death penalty. You will get probably 5 years, 10 years. So going by that, I think it's a strong deterrent.
Right, Kartike. All right. All right, we have Sandhya Bajaj from National Prevention of Child Rights also joining us on this show. Sandhya, this is quite a landmark move. As far as the ordinance goes, it's finally been amended, and death penalty will be finally the maximum sentence for child rapists. Your take on that?
Yes, I welcome it. It was really needed after POXO Act. That is also very, very stringent act. Even then, people were really not afraid of this. Implementation was very less. That's why I want to say this was really needed. And the child is a very soft target for this rapist because children don't have their voice. So this will be the voice of the children. That act will really give more and more strength to the children. And now children will be free and they will be caught.
Right.
They will be catched.
Right.
Yeah. And I want to say, अभी जो माहौल चल रहा था, कठुआ की बच्ची को सैल्यूट है. और ये जो बच्चे हैं, इन्होंने जिस तरीके से जितनी हॉरर उनकी हमारे सामने बात आई है, मैं ये कहना चाहूंगी कि मोदी सरकार का ये बहुत बड़ा स्टेप है, बहुत बड़ा कानून.
Right, Ms. Bajaj, thank you so much for joining us on WION.